You know, you've probably heard the phrase hiding in plain sight. We use it all the time.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
Right. But what if the thing hiding from you is the exact thing you're most desperately looking for? Just like think about that for a second.
That's a trippy thought, honestly.
It really is. Have you ever been so completely overwhelmed by a massive disappointment that your reality basically shrank to the size of your own grief? Like you are looking around, but you aren't really seeing.
Yeah, you're just sort of functionally blind to the world around you.
Exactly. And today we are taking a deep dive into an ancient text that captures that exact human experience, maybe better than anything else written in the ancient world.
It's a fascinating piece of literature.
It really is. We are looking at a narrative from the Gospel of Luke, specifically chapter 24, verses 13 through 35. It is universally known as the story of the Emmaus Road.
And our goal today is to look at this text through a very specific lens. We're analyzing this strictly as a piece of profound literature and historical narrative.
Right, keeping it to the text itself.
Yeah, we are setting aside the broader theological debates to just look at the mechanics of the story. Because regardless of your background, this text is an absolute masterclass in the psychology of perception.
For sure.
It shows the anatomy of dashed expectations and those sudden jarring moments where everything just finally clicks.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have a story set on an April 19th Sunday. The text calls it the first day of the week.
Right.
And the setting is crucial here because this is happening in the immediate aftermath of a deeply traumatic public event in Jerusalem.
A very public, very brutal event.
Yeah, we are talking about the crucifixion of a figure these specific characters had followed, trusted, and basically built their entire lives around.
To really understand the climax of this story, we first have to understand the deep psychological space the characters are starting from.
Just trauma.
Exactly. This isn't just a bummer of a weekend. This is a space of profound, disorienting grief.
Yep.
If you're listening to this and thinking about a time your own life script got completely torn up, you know the feeling. Their entire paradigm has just violently collapsed.
Let's put ourselves on that road for a second. The text paints a very specific physical scene. We have two travelers.
Right, just walking.
Yeah, they're walking away from Jerusalem, heading to a village named Emmaus, which the text notes is about 7 miles away. And as they are walking, they are deep in discussion about the recent tragic events.
It's that intense processing kind of conversation.
Right, the kind you only have after the bottom totally falls out of your world.
Yeah, it's an obsession cycle. When your reality breaks, your brain just loops the breaking point over and over, trying to make sense of something completely senseless.
Which is so relatable.
And that is exactly when the inciting incident of our narrative occurs. A stranger draws near and starts walking with them.
Okay, here we go.
Now, the text explicitly identifies this stranger to the reader as Jesus himself. But it gives us this incredibly curious detail about the travelers. It says, their eyes were kept from recognizing him.
I want to push back on that phrasing a bit because kept from recognizing him is such a fascinating way to put it.
It is, yeah.
It almost sounds like a magic spell. But let's think about this 7-mile walk. It isn't just, walking out of a stadium after your favorite team loses a championship.
Right, that's just sadness.
Exactly. This is more like discovering the company you've devoted 20 years of your life to, believing it was curing cancer, was actually a massive fraud.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's a good comparison.
Your entire framework for who you are and what the future holds just evaporated. You're walking down the road, your shoulders are heavy, your head is down.
You're just totally defeated.
Right. If someone walked up to you, you wouldn't even really look at them.
Yeah.
So are we supposed to read this kept from recognizing as a purely mystical veil, or is the text pointing to psychological shock?
Well, that tension is the brilliance of the narrative. It functions heavily on a psychological level, and the mechanics of that are fascinating. Neurologically, when you're in a state of profound traumatic grief, your brain's amygdala essentially hijacks your prefrontal cortex.
Really? Like a physical response?
Yes. You aren't just distracted. Your brain physically blocks out new data that doesn't fit the immediate threat or the trauma you are processing. It's a survival mechanism.
That is wild.
You literally cannot process new paradigm-breaking information when you are in a state of mourning. So their trauma is quite literally blinding them.
But the text implies there's more to it, right?
It does. It leaves room for a deliberate narrative withholding. When the stranger asks them what they are discussing, the text says they stood still, looking sad.
Just a hard stop.
Right. It is a full physical stop. The momentum of their escape is halted by a simple question.
And the reaction to that question is so raw. One of them, a guy named Cleopas, basically looks at the stranger like he's out of his mind.
He's just baffled.
Yeah, he says, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?"
Which is such a classic grief response.
Totally. It's that isolating feeling of grief. Like, how can you not know my world just ended? How is the rest of the world just going on like normal?
And the stranger just plays along. He asks, what things?
I love that.
Right. And in response, Cleopas summarizes their entirely shattered worldview. He talks about Jesus of Nazareth, calling him a mighty prophet indeed, and word before God and all the people.
Setting up how important he was to them.
Yes. And then he recounts how the chief priests and rulers condemned and crucified him. But the most devastating line, the absolute emotional core of this entire section, is when Cleopas says, but we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel.
We had hoped.
Yeah.
Past tense. That is just brutal.
It's heartbreaking. It is the universal language of a broken paradigm. They are walking away from Jerusalem because the story didn't end the way they thought it absolutely had to end.
Right. They had a script.
Exactly. They had a very specific script for how redemption was supposed to look. For first-century folks, that script was almost certainly a political or military victory.
They wanted a revolution.
They expected a revolution. The crucifixion didn't just delay that script, it tore it to shreds.
Yeah.
Their hope is entirely in the past tense.
But as they are explaining this grief to the stranger, they start spilling this lingering, confusing thread that completely shifts the dynamic of the conversation.
Oh, the rumors.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting. They start talking about a rumor. They tell the stranger that it's the third day since the crucifixion, and some women from their group amaze them.
Amaze is a great word there.
Right. These women went to the tomb early in the morning, couldn't find the body, and came back claiming they saw a vision of angels who said he was alive.
Which just adds to the confusion.
And then others went, verified the tomb was empty, but didn't actually see him.
Notice how incredibly chaotic their information is right now.
It's a mess.
They have overwhelming trauma, they have grief, they have an empty tomb, they have secondary reports of angels from trusted friends, and they have zero physical proof.
It's just too much to process.
The friction between trusted sources and impossible claims creates pure cognitive dissonance. Their brains literally cannot hold all these contradictory facts at the same time.
And the dramatic irony here is just off the charts.
Oh, absolutely.
It plays out exactly like a movie where the audience knows the massive secret that the characters on screen don't. Think about the absurdity of this moment.
It's almost comical.
It is. These two devastated travelers are earnestly, painfully explaining the life, the death, and the wild rumored resurrection of Jesus.
Directly to Jesus.
Yes,
There.
directly to him. They are essentially giving his own eulogy to his face.
What's fascinating here is the stranger's reaction to that eulogy.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't coddle their grief.
No, he really doesn't.
He doesn't gently put a hand on their shoulder and say, hey, it's okay, I'm right here.
Which is what you would expect.
Right. Instead, he goes right for the jugular of their assumptions. He bluntly calls them, "O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken."
Wait, that is aggressively blunt.
It is.
They are actively mourning him. They are pouring their hearts out, and his immediate response is to call them foolish. That feels almost cruel in the moment.
It feels cruel until you realize what is actually at stake for them. It's a radical pedagogical move. He is attacking their entire premise.
Okay, how so?
He asks them, was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? He isn't comforting them. He is forcing them to question their deepest, most unexamined assumptions.
Because they viewed the crucifixion as the end.
Exactly. They viewed it as the ultimate failure, the hard stop at the end of the story. The stranger is introducing a completely new framework.
Reframing the whole thing.
He is asking them to look at their ultimate disappointment not as an ending, but as a necessary bridge. He is telling them their script wasn't just ruined by bad luck, their script was wrong from the very beginning.
Which brings us to what I think is the most baffling choice in this entire text.
Oh, the history lesson.
Yes. Because at this point, if you are the stranger, you've made your point,
Yeah.
you called them out. But instead of just ending the suspense, pulling back the hood, and proving his identity visually right then and there, the stranger decides to put them through a massive lecture.
A very long walk.
Yeah, the text says that beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself.
A walking, comprehensive exposition of ancient literature.
Which, let's be honest, sounds like the absolute last thing you want when you're depressed, traumatized, and just trying to go home.
Yeah, you just want to sleep.
Exactly. Like, hey guys, I know your world just ended and you're exhausted, but let me give you a 3-hour lecture on ancient history.
It's a lot.
Why make that narrative choice? I mean, if you are back from the dead walking next to your grieving friends, why not just say, surprise, it's me, stop crying, and be done with it?
Because the text is placing a foundational value on understanding over mere visual confirmation.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Let's think about the mechanics of a paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
If he just reveals himself instantly, it's a shock, it's a magic trick. It's a happy anomaly, sure, but it doesn't solve their underlying problem. And their problem was that their entire framework for understanding reality was fundamentally broken. Their lens was shattered.
So they wouldn't even know what to do with the miracle anyway.
Exactly. By walking them through Moses and the prophets, the stranger is taking the exact same data points they already had: their history, their texts, their traditions, and drawing an entirely new constellation for them.
Connecting the dots.
He is synthesizing diverse information and spotting historical patterns they completely missed because they were so focused on a political victory.
So instead of just fixing their sadness, he's fixing the broken lens itself.
Yes.
He's rebuilding their paradigm from the ground up so that the resurrection isn't just a random magic trick, but the logical conclusion of the story.
That is the crucial mechanism here. True comprehension requires connecting the past to the present. If they don't understand the why of the suffering, then the what of the resurrection is just a confusing, isolated spectacle.
That makes a lot of sense.
The intellectual groundwork had to be laid carefully before the physical reveal could actually mean anything lasting. They needed to understand that the suffering they just witnessed wasn't a tragic detour from the plan, it was the mechanism of the plan itself.
Wow. So the intellectual groundwork is laid. He's redrawn the constellation for them on this dirt road.
Yeah.
But, we know from our own lives that logically understanding something doesn't necessarily make you feel it in your gut.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I can intellectually know a plane is perfectly safe, but my palms still sweat on takeoff.
Exactly.
So how does the text bridge that gap? Because the actual aha moment, the moment the scales finally fall from their eyes, it doesn't happen during the debate.
No, it doesn't. It requires a profound transition from the abstract to the concrete.
Okay.
The transition from the road to the room.
Let's follow them there. So they finally arrive at Emmaus. It's evening. The text notes the day is far spent.
They're tired.
Very tired. And the stranger does this interesting little test where he acts as if he is going to keep walking further down the road. But the travelers strongly urge him to stay with them. They invite him in out of the dark.
Hospitality was a big deal.
Yeah. So he goes in, they sit down at the table, and he takes the bread, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it to them. And suddenly, boom! Their eyes were opened and they recognized him.
And immediately, the text says, he vanishes from their sight.
Which is wild. But it is an incredibly sharp narrative pivot.
It really is.
It's like the climactic scene in a great mystery novel where the detective finally sees how all the clues fit together. But the trigger for the realization wasn't a complex equation.
Right.
It wasn't the hours of brilliant deductive reasoning on the road. It was the incredibly mundane, familiar act of breaking a piece of bread.
Just a normal dinner.
Yeah, why that? To me, it feels like muscle memory. It bypasses the intellect entirely. It's an intimate physical gesture they had likely seen him do 100 times before.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a beautiful contrast that the narrative is presenting about how humans process truth.
Okay, tell me more.
You have the grand, sweeping theological lecture on the road. That prepared their minds. It loosened the soil. It gave them the framework.
The intellectual side.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was the familiar, shared, communal action at a dinner table that finally opened their eyes.
Yeah.
Think about the sensory experience of that moment.
Oh, I see what you mean.
The smell of the bread, the specific way a friend tears a loaf, the cadence of the blessing. Those things speak directly to the emotional core. It speaks to the idea that ultimate truths are rarely realized through abstract lectures alone.
You have to feel it.
They require lived, communal experiences. The intellectual framework is absolutely necessary, but the relational intimacy is what actually triggers the recognition.
And the moment that recognition happens, he just vanishes.
Gone.
Which is crazy because finally they get exactly what they wanted, and the second they realize they have it, it's gone.
But look at how they react.
Yeah, the fascinating part is that his vanishing doesn't even seem to bother them. They don't plunge back into despair because this moment of clarity has completely rewired their physical and emotional reality.
Exactly. The text captures their internal physiological processing beautifully here in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, they don't go to sleep. They turn to each other and say, "Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened to us the scriptures?"
Burning hearts.
So, what does this all mean? Why specifically mention the burning hearts? If you are listening to this, have you ever felt that heat in your chest?
It's a very real feeling.
To me, it represents that unique, incredibly powerful physiological sensation you get when deeply complex information finally clicks into place.
Like a light bulb, but physical.
Yes, it's that feeling when a truth resonates so deeply it actually manifests as a physical heat. The intellectual lecture on the road was causing a visceral reaction in their bodies long before their conscious minds caught up to who was actually giving the lecture.
This raises an important question about the sheer power of a changed perspective. Look at the physical actions they take next.
It's the total opposite of what they were doing.
Exactly. It is evening. The day is far spent, which, remember, is the exact reason they urged the stranger to stay in the first place. Traveling at night in the ancient world wasn't just exhausting, it was legitimately dangerous.
There are no streetlights on the road to Jerusalem.
None. Yet the text says they rose that same hour and returned to Jerusalem.
They walk the 7 miles back in the pitch black.
It is a brilliant physical narrative reversal. Think about how they started this day. They were dragging themselves away from Jerusalem, isolated, despairing, weighted down by a trauma that literally blinded them.
Completely crushed.
Their worldview was crushed.
Yeah.
Now they end the day completely energized, essentially sprinting back in the dark toward the very city they were fleeing, toward their community.
The contrast is huge.
The physical distance of the road is exactly the same. The danger of the night is exactly the same. But the internal reality of the travelers has entirely inverted.
And when they finally get back to Jerusalem, probably out of breath, they find the 11 other disciples gathered together.
Right.
And before Cleopas and his friend can even get a word out, the group in Jerusalem shouts, "The Lord has risen indeed and has appeared to Simon." So you have this incredible moment of corroborating evidence suddenly coming from both sides, and then our exhausted travelers get to share their piece of the puzzle, what happened on the road, and specifically how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread.
It all comes together.
The broken paradigm hasn't just been repaired with a Band-Aid, it's been fully restored and expanded into a completely new understanding of how the world works.
The narrative takes us through a complete masterful cycle. It starts with blindness, induced by shattered expectations.
Yeah.
It moves to a harsh challenging of those assumptions, then to a massive intellectual reframing of history. From there, it transitions to sensory, communal intimacy, and finally ends with clear, energized vision.
It's a complete transformation.
It argues, quite profoundly, that sometimes the things we are absolutely convinced are the devastating end of our story are actually just the necessary prerequisites for a much larger understanding.
It really is an incredible journey. We've watched these characters move from crippling grief and total cognitive dissonance, dragging their feet on a dusty road, all the way to this visceral, eyes-wide-open realization that literally propels them through the dark.
Yeah, sprinting back home.
It is a story about how humans process massive paradigm shifts. It reminds us that sometimes the absolute truth is walking right next to us, matching our pace, but we just don't have the right framework to see it yet.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over, a question that this ancient text directly poses to our modern lives.
What's that?
Well, if a simple shift in understanding can completely change your physical reality, literally turning a sad, heavy 7-mile retreat into an energized 7-mile sprint in the dark, what current disappointments or dead ends in your own life might just be a narrative you haven't fully understood yet?
Oh, that's good.
What if you were walking right alongside the answer you need, but you were so hyper-focused on the life script you thought you lost that your eyes are just currently kept from recognizing it?